How's it going, everyone? This is the George here, and today I'm going to be reviewing an old classic movie that I love that I recently rewatched because I rewatch this movie at least once a year, and that is 12 Angry Men. That's right, this movie was directed by Sidney Lumet and stars Henry Fonda and Lee J. Cobb, and this very tense jury movie that takes place in one room for most of the movie in a courthouse. Basically, it's these 12 men, they're jurors. You have to determine whether or not this kid, this 18-year-old who grew up in a slum, killed his dad or not. And if he's found guilty, he's going to be sent to the electric chair. And Henry Fonda, as juror number 8, is the only man who at first believes that this kid is not guilty. Although he's not fully convinced that he's not guilty, but he's not fully convinced that he's guilty either. And so it's up to him to convince the other jurors to hear out more evidence, hear out the possibilities of whether or not this kid is guilty or not. And while all this is happening, it's a hot summer day in this one room. The fan's not working. It's the hottest day of the year. One of the jurors even said that at the beginning. So when it comes to 12 Angry Men, the first time I watched this movie was back in 8th grade. We had to read 12 Angry Men for 8th grade language arts. And reading the story was fine, but it was watching the movie that really got me hooked on because we watched the movie after we read the story and took the test. And my language arts teacher in 8th grade, he was also in charge of our middle school movie club. So he always had the movies, and of course, he had 12 Angry Men, and we watched it. And even at the age of 14, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the performances, how tense, the way that dialogue was delivered. It just won me over right away. I didn't even care it was a black and white movie. But even back then, I never really cared if movies were black and white. I know some people are like, oh, old black and white movie. Who cares about that? Not exciting. 12 Angry Men is definitely one of, if not the most exciting black and white movie that had ever came out. And even if you don't judge it by black and white, it's definitely one of the most entertaining older movies, pre 1960, 1970 movies of all time. And the thing that I've always enjoyed about this movie has always been the setting. It takes, as I mentioned before, it takes place in this one room for most of the movie. And even when it's not in that one room, it's still taking place in the courthouse. They don't leave the courthouse until the very end of the movie. For most of the movie, they're in this room trying to determine whether or not this kid is guilty or not. And it's hot. They're trying to open the windows and it starts to rain. The fan only works when the light turns on. And by the way, there's going to be spoilers because this movie's been out since 1957. So if you haven't seen 12 Angry Men, I suggest you turn it off now because there's going to be spoilers. But if you have seen it and don't care about spoilers, then stick around to watch the entire review. And by the way, you can probably find this movie on TV, any streaming service, most likely digital rental, or order it on DVD or Blu-ray. I know stores are phasing out physical media, but you can definitely order this on Amazon. I ordered it on Amazon a few years ago, so it's possible. And it's not even expensive on Amazon, so go order it if you want a physical copy. But back to the movie. This one setting really adds to the tension because these men are stuck together in this room together, and there's some bickering back and forth. There's some agreement, there's some disagreement. At one point, juror number 3 tries to attack juror number 8. It's very tense in this room. And you always feel the tension when the camera zooms in on the face. And that's another thing I'll say about this movie. The camera work in 12 Angry Men is some of the best camera work I've seen in any movie. And we've gotten a lot of movies in the almost 70 years since 12 Angry Men came out. A lot of great camera work in movies, even if the movie isn't so great. But 12 Angry Men is still one of my favorite movies in regards to camera work because in some scenes, he's able to capture the whole room with all the jurors. One of the key examples, and it's actually on the back of the DVD. It's when juror number 10 goes on his racist rant. It's like on the back. Sorry if the light makes it hard, but you see all the jurors turning their backs on him, him and them being disappointed and angry with him over his bigoted rant. And we're going to talk more about that scene later in the movie. But from camera work like that to capturing one side of the room where a few jurors are talking, whether it's about the case or something else, and then you get the close-up shots of the jurors, and when it's their moment to speak, when it's their moment to say, "Hey, I think he's not guilty. He didn't change his vote. I did." Stuff like that. It's really great zoom in work and zooming out work in this movie for a movie that was filmed in the mid late 1950s. Sidney Lumet deserves a lot of credit for his camera work in this movie. And by the way, even though this might be a gross detail, the zooming in on their faces, it also captures just how hot they're feeling because you start to see them sweat, and yeah, the sweat's getting on their shirts, but it also reminds us just how hot it is in this room and without the fan, and the heated arguments are definitely not helping these jurors cool off. But let's talk about the jurors. Another thing, the main juror characters are jurors number 8 and juror number 3. Juror number 8, played by Henry Fonda, the one juror who, right from the beginning, votes not guilty. And then there's juror number 3, who you can consider the antagonist of the movie, who he wants to pull that switch on this kid on the electric chair so hard. He's hot tempered. He's always arguing. He gets annoyed when another juror sides with juror number 8. Lee J. Cobb does such a phenomenal job playing this hot tempered juror, but there's also a backstory to this juror. And it's one of the driving points as to why he believes this kid is guilty. It's that he's estranged from his own son, got into a fight with his own son a few years ago. And, he always keeps bringing up saying, "You worked your life, you worked your heart out for them," that kind of stuff. And, he's got his own bias with the case because of his own relationship with his son. I think, if anything, this is the most powerful performance of the movie from Lee J. Cobb. Yeah, Henry Fonda delivers a powerful performance and he does a phenomenal job. But it's Lee J. Cobb and the way he delivers his angry dialogue, like his mannerisms, his body gestures. It's just, he does such a phenomenal job in this movie. And what I love is, even though these are the two main characters of the movie, each juror has their own distinct personality that makes them unique. For example, you got juror number 7. He's very impatient. He wants to get to his Yankee game, and he only really votes not guilty towards the middle of the movie because he sees the tide is turning in favor of not guilty. You have juror number 5, who's one of the early jurors to vote not guilty, who also grew up in a slum, and he's very sensitive to those who show bigotry towards slum kids. You got juror number 4, one of the last few who is convinced that the kid's not guilty, but it's not bigotry or prejudice that's driving why he thinks this kid is guilty. It's the facts that were presented to him and the testimony that the witnesses gave that he thinks is powerful, until juror number 9 brings up the fact that one of the witnesses, that claims she saw the kid, might have worn glasses but wasn't wearing them that night. Each juror has their own personality, and you can tell from the beginning of the movie which jurors are going to be the cool, calm, collective ones that can be easily swayed by juror number 8, who will probably change their vote early on, and which ones are going to be more difficult. They're going to be impatient. They're going to push back. It's going to take a while to convince them. One in particular is juror number 10. Now, as I mentioned before, when I was showing this part right here, juror number 10, he's basing this on bigotry and prejudice. He's very against slum kids. He goes on a rant at some point at the end of the movie. And one of the most powerful scenes of the movie, as I mentioned before, is when each of the jurors are getting up and they're turning their backs on him. They're going to other places of the room, looking disappointed and angry. And juror number 4, and this is when juror number 4 is still in the guilty camp. He's just sitting glaring at juror number 10, and he just tells him to shut up for the rest of day. Because, again, as I mentioned before, juror number 4, he's basing this on the facts, not on bigotry and where this kid grew up, based on the facts that were presented to him in the testimony. But even he's like, yeah, you're a bigot. Shut up. Such a powerful moment, especially for a movie that was made in 1957. Just an incredible, powerful moment in this movie. But I also want to get into the conversation because this is a movie where there's a lot of talking happening, a lot of arguing and debating with the evidence. And this movie probably does arguing and debating better than any debate political movie that has ever come out. The way they're debating as to whether or not, the knife that's used, if that's a common knife to use, or how the stab wound happened, or how quickly an old man who, when he was going up to the stand, was moving so slowly, how quickly he moved in his apartment. Like, there's such interesting conversation in here. And it could be also the quick way that these characters talk, because back in the old movies, yeah, the actors did a lot of quick talking, which adds a lot of entertainment value to older movies. But it's just so incredible, well, the conversation that happens. And the most powerful moment of the movie is when all the other jurors except juror number 3 are in the not guilty camp, and juror number 3 is just ranting. He's getting really heated, and he takes that picture of him and his son. He starts ripping at him. When he realizes what he's done, he regrets it and breaks down, and he realizes that he let his bias based on his history with his kid drive the reason why he thinks this kid is guilty, and then says not guilty. And when all the other jurors are leaving the room, juror number 8, in a friendly gesture of respect, hands juror number 3 his coat and helps him put it on, showing that there's no ill will towards juror number 8. Juror number 3, sorry. And by the way, we always refer to these characters as jurors number 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 12. One of the things that's really interesting is we really don't know these characters' names. We just know their professions and some of their hobbies until the end of the movie, when juror number 8 and juror number 9, the first juror that sides with juror number 8, properly introduce themselves to one another as they're leaving the courtroom. But the thing I gotta note about this movie as well is, if this movie was made today, it feels like this movie could easily break into a flashback camp sequence kind of thing, where whether the characters are talking about their own personal history, juror number 5 talking about growing up in the slums, or juror number 1 telling the story about a football game that he was coaching where it was raining cats and dogs, or juror number 3 talking about his fight with his kid. If this movie was made today, I feel like, and if it was made by someone else, it could easily fall into a flashback trap, where as these characters are talking about themselves and using their past experience as an example as to why the kid could be guilty or not guilty, I feel like this movie could easily fall into the flashback trap. Or even as they're talking about what might have happened with the murder, they could have easily shown flashbacks of the kid or whoever did truly commit the murder, leaving the scene of the crime or committing the crime. The movie doesn't do that. It's always focused on this room. And I feel like that's why it's so perfect that this movie was made when it was, because I feel like today it would fall into a flashback trap. That's just how I feel. Maybe it wouldn't, but I don't want to see this movie get remade. I know there was a late 90s made for TV movie remake of this. I've never seen it before, but I've heard some good stuff about it, so maybe I'll check it out one day. But I don't want to see this be remade, because it's one of those few movies that you can say is perfect. I mean, as far as pre-1970 movies go, 12 Angry Men is one of the top 3 best pre-1970 movies of all time. Like, I can't find a damn thing wrong with this movie. The acting is perfect. The tension is perfect. Just in this one setting alone, The movie score is perfect. It also captures the time period, the late 1950s in New York City. It just a fantastic movie that even if you don't like black and white movies, go watch 12 Angry Men. If anything, this might be the movie that could get you into black and white movies, especially if this is one of the first ones you're going to watch, because 12 Angry Men is just that perfect of a movie. And it's not even that long of a movie. It's like around an hour and 30 minutes long. And it doesn't need to be longer or shorter. It's perfectly timed and paced as well. I'm going to give 12 Angry Men an A+. This is one of the best movies ever made. It's one of my favorite movies to watch. It's why I watch it every year. Try to watch it every year. Heck, I'll try to start watching it more than once a year. That's just how amazing this movie is. And to me, this is a movie that I've never gone to film school. I've never been in a film class. I've been in classes where we've had to watch plenty of movies, such as Picture Through Media, an introduction to media class that I took in college. But I would say, if you go to film school, I hope you should be watching 12 Angry Men. That's all I'm going to say. 12 Angry Men is the perfect example of great dialogue, how a movie that takes place in one setting can be perfect, and great camera work. But yeah, if you haven't seen 12 Angry Men, go check it out. It's that fantastic of a movie. I enjoyed this movie so much. And what are your thoughts on 12 Angry Men? Did you love it? Did you hate it? And what's one of your favorite movies that came out before 1970? I know I've reviewed Alfred Hitchcock movies in the past before, so if there's an Alfred Hitchcock movie that's in that category, you can pick that as well. But yeah, what's one of your favorite pre-1970 movies? Let me know in the comments down below. And I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe wherever you have it. Please share this with someone that loves 12 Angry Men. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.